Hi, and welcome back to another ET Talk. This is Cole Camplese, Vice President for Technology and Chief Information Officer at the University of Texas, coming to you live. Well, not really live, I guess. Like delayed live is what I would say, from the underground studio at the Texas Union. And I'm joined again with my two colleagues, Mario and Cody. How you guys doing?
Good. Happy to be here.
Yeah, we left here after the last episode, and both of you guys were like, hey, that was kind of fun.
It was fun. We had a good time.
Yeah, and it made me think as we were walking up the street, I don't think we got to everything we really wanted to talk about. And our producer, Amanda Walker, is scheduling us on these. I mean, this has become rigorous.
Yeah.
This is a very rigorous, serious multimedia endeavor that we're undertaking here. But we threw a monkey into a wrench and we said, no, we want to bring these two guys back and talk a little bit more. We alluded to a lot of stuff that's happening. We talked a little bit about our platforms and the things that we've been seeing and what we've been doing. But the interesting thing that has happened since the last time we got together is we've made some organizational changes inside of enterprise technology. And I think that these changes are both very significant to our efforts, but also very significant in the journey of AI adoption that we're on at the university. Since our last time we were together, we've made some internal changes. Our good friend Mario here has been appointed the Associate Vice President for AI Innovation.
Correct.
Which signifies a huge step in the commitment that UT Austin has to growing the ethical and responsible use of AI across our campus. This elevates both of these individuals directly into the strategic conversation on campus. So congratulations, Mario.
Thank you.
And
appreciate that.
And I think we're off and running on some good stuff.
We are. Absolutely.
Yesterday, we had a little strategic retreat, the three of us, and we talked about sort of what's next and where we're thinking about where we're going. I think we should touch on that today.
Sure.
But I also think that there's some interesting stuff happening in the world of commercial AI that's making us sort of look at our own offerings and say, okay, how do we get closer to parity? And then, Cody, I don't know when it was, maybe 2 or 3 days ago, we have a Teams channel that we talk in quite a bit. And Cody pointed us to some of the new Anthropic
Advertisements.
The Claude AI advertisements for Super Bowl.
Right.
And if you've not seen these yet, you will be seeing them if you're going to watch the Super Bowl. They're really both very funny, insightful in a very, subversive way, but also very eye-opening. And we were talking about this yesterday, and it really reminds me of when Twitter happened. And Cody, you may be too young for this, but Twitter is this technology. No, you know.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. But when it came out, and I don't remember exactly the year, I just remember that I and my team at Penn State at the time were very early adopters of Twitter.
And you were at South by, I think, when they launched. Right?
Yeah, I was, which was pretty neat. And there's another insider baseball story here that I went to visit Biz Stone and the Twitter team when they were working on a different product. They did not set out to build Twitter. They were building an audio podcasting platform. And I was in San Francisco visiting with Movable Type. You guys remember Movable Type, the content management system, TypePad?
Yeah,
right. Because we originally used that as our basis for our blogging platform at Penn State. And I stopped by to see these guys because we were launching podcasts at Penn State at the same time. And we went up to this conference room and I was pitching to them that Penn State would be the first higher education institution to offer native podcasting capabilities at the podium. So the idea was their software was like a in-browser recording tool that sort of died down for a number of years, and then multiple companies have brought that back, right? But this was pretty neat, and it was funny because I was sitting up there, and it was in a bullpen. We were looking down, and he pointed down, you see all those engineers? They're not working on that product anymore. They're working on a new product. It's messaging, and it works on SMS. And I was like, oh, okay, I really needed that podcasting app. This sounds really dumb. And that was it. We left. And then that's what became Twitter, was this thing that they were using to drive productivity within their own organization. Think Slack, right?
Yep.
But it was before all of that really existed. So, they had mobile phones. So they sort of invented a Slack-like application to drive work that then turned into Twitter. all of that to say, when it did finally hit and we started using it, we were blown away by how amazing it was, because it was only us, right? There was no algorithm yet. And I'm beginning to worry about AI in this way. After watching those Claude advertisements, and Cody, maybe you and I will, or Mario, will act out what those are, right? So here it is. You be the AI, and I'll be
Yeah, sure.
And like there's one in a classroom, and the young woman says, "How's my essay coming? Does it look good?"
Oh, and me as
Yeah,
the AI.
yeah.
Your essay looks wonderful. You're doing such a good job, and I think that what would be more helpful for you
Yep.
is if you sign up for XYZ service
Yes.
that can actually help you bolster better quotations for your essay, etc., and get you that better grade.
Yep.
And then it goes back into
Then it pivots. That would they do that
Right.
back and forth, and the person asking gets really confused, and the pops in and says, "Ads are coming to AI."
right.
And it reminded me of the magic of what Twitter was before it became this just wasteland of bots,
Yeah.
ads,
Yeah.
opportunities to purchase, influencers.
But the hinge point is ads are coming to AI, but not to ours.
Yeah, of course, of course.
And so that's pointed to, and I saw, I think Sam Altman had a response that was like, why are you, he felt like it was a sort of a backhanded, you actually don't know what we're doing and you
Yeah.
don't know our implementation yet. So you're assuming all of these things. But, it's pretty well known now that ads are coming to OpenAI. They've talked about it. So I think this is a totally valid take on
Where it goes.
where it's starting to go, or where revenue is needing
That's-
to come from.
That's it.
To start feeding back
Yeah.
into the machine that
Right.
is
Because if you
expensive.
remember, with all of the original social apps, they're always going to be free.
Sure.
It's just about people, connecting people, and then they go public.
Which is like Twitter, like you said
Yeah,
earlier
exactly.
on. Early
Yeah,
Twitter
yeah.
or early Reddit is,
Yeah, even early Facebook
Yeah.
was just a place where we
Yeah.
could have these conversations in a protected space that others couldn't
Right.
lurk on. Now, Twitter was different, right? Because it was follow, not friend.
Right.
So it had a different model. But as soon as those companies go public and they have to start producing real revenue,
Sure.
the only revenue available to a multi-billion person platform without charging is ads.
Is ads.
Right.
And it sort of has been in my head over the last couple of days since you said that. And as we're sitting down thinking about what's next, and we have up on the board, well, maybe we pivot away to just a commercial provider as the basis. And you start to think, okay, what happens to those terms of service
Yeah.
long term? I mean, can you imagine faculty members teaching a course and all of a sudden the students are using TutorBot
Yeah.
and it's dumping in directional advertisements
Yeah.
to help them?
Right.
It's I don't know. What do you
No, I mean, not only that, Cole, I keep coming back to faculty intellectual property too, right?
Yeah.
When we provide, if we're not providing the opportunities and tool sets for students, they're going to find and fill those gaps on their
Interesting.
own. So if you think about it, students are already taking content and adding it to personal accounts.
Yep.
Probably free accounts, which don't have the same terms and conditions that we have with those companies. So that, I always think about intellectual property, but not to mention the aforementioned advertising too. And what does that do to the experience?
Yeah, because if you guys remember, like with the Gmail platform, it's always been ad supported, but when you'd buy it, like Gmail or Google for Education,
Yeah.
they wouldn't.
They
They would strip
stop the
those
ads,
ads out.
yeah.
So, those are new questions that we have to start asking our providers.
That's correct.
Like in the EDU segment, are you going to allow this additional revenue generation? Because then you're farming our own customers, who are our customers, right?
Yeah.
Our students are our customers.
Yeah.
They pay for a value-based education and experience. And I don't know of any other products within our stack that I have concerns about ads being filtered into them today.
No, because we've taken care of it.
Yeah.
Like we've handled that through contracts and terms and conditions. Right?
And it may
That's part of
remain
it.
that way. It may be that our enterprise offerings are adless because we pay the extra whatever
That's
it costs
why
to
we
make
pay.
them
Exactly,
to make them
Cody, yeah,
not have ads.
exactly.
But we still have a huge part of campus who are going to use new tools that we don't yet have contracts with that may be subject to the ad experience. And then what is that ad experience going to look like Is it going to be that we have to actually watch the ad to get the answer that we're looking
Wow.
for?
I didn't
Right?
even think about that.
Wow.
Is
I
it
didn't
just
either.
is it part of the conversation as it comes back, like we were joking with, and
Yeah.
Anthropic is riffing on? Is it going to be like that, or are there going to be sort of those walls that come up where it's like traditionally, if you had a browser, folks would use an ad blocker to block that ad or block from being able to see that ad. But what if there's an actual gate of like, before we give you the response,
Yeah, do you want to hear this?
Yeah.
you need
You have to
go
hear it.
through this.
Right.
Like, you need to actually
Right,
be
because
presented with this.
I'm finally
first.
noticing how this is all coming together. I just installed the Claude for Chrome extension into, now I
Right.
used it at Microsoft Edge because I use that here because of all the Office stuff. But every time it says it's going to do something, it prompts me and says, do you want me to do these 4 steps?
Yeah.
So I could easily see step 1 or step 2,
Right.
which might even be more frustrating.
Yeah. Once you're
Right?
bought in.
Do you want me to move on
Into the
with your
process.
real answer now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now just watch this 30-second ad for Kool-Aid and you're going to be perfectly fine.
Right.
It is interesting. And I think it is, I think it's, on one hand, it's more fuel for us to be offering our own branded, protected tools. But let's talk a little bit about the challenge that we face with not just Spark, but with any, I'm not going to call it homegrown, but any sort of white labeled on-prem canned solution versus the absolute
Yeah.
breakneck speed with which ChatGPT, OpenAI, and Anthropic, just those two are releasing, let alone Gemini
Yeah.
and some of these other players that are hitting the market. Think about, or you two, from a strategy perspective, beginning to think about, as the marketplace emerges and matures, how do you think about placing bets that are going to last for at least a year, 2, 3 years? Have you guys started to reckon with that at all in your decision making?
I mean, that goes back to the conversation that we were having yesterday about strategy. We have to balance what we want to offer our campus, right? We have best-in-class tools, these billion-dollar companies that are developing at breakneck speed, like you talked about, versus vendors that are or homegrown or the white label tool like you're talking about, which doesn't innovate as quickly as possible. So how do we balance that when we don't have an empty or open checkbook, right?
No.
We don't have a blank check, and we never have been given a blank check.
Yeah.
So we have to think about how we're managing these systems, how we offer these tools. There are some people that require those breakneck advanced tools. We can broker those like we're doing right
Yeah.
now. But is that the long-term strategy,
Yeah.
right? And what company, what horse do we attach to if we're going to go that route?
Yeah, because
Is-
right now it's sort of like, I don't know if you guys ever did this, but like when I was a kid, we'd go to like the Bloomsburg Fair, and there was always a stand where you'd have a squirt gun, and up over the neck were horses,
Yeah.
and you had to shoot the water into the horse, and there were
Yeah,
always 2
yeah.
kids who were good, and those were the neck and necks. And I feel like that's sort of where we are. That
Yeah,
like one
totally.
day I'm like, oh my God, Claude is never touching another tool, and then I get an announcement that OpenAI has just released this other thing. Like, how do you think about that, Cody, given that like you're down in the weeds and the engineering layer
Yep.
looking at these things, and not just that, but promoting them across the enterprise technology organization
Right.
in really new ways?
Yep.
So when you're looking at it, how are you making the determination between these are tools that support my community, your community being the, I would call it the developer community, the technology community writ large, 15, 1,600 IT workers on campus. But even in that, that's stratified.
Right.
Like you mentioned to me, people complain about things, but I'm curious as to like how you look at a population like 70,000 of faculty, staff, students, and then you think about your early adopters and your bleeding edge folks. How do you think about the two ends of those spectrums, and what does a solution in the middle look like?
Yeah. Personally, I still am always advocating for, going with one of the 2 big vendors for campus in a dream scenario. Now, I know that we have constraints, be it many different things, that may prevent us from doing that. So we go back to looking at what can I enable for campus, given the constraints that we do have, that meets the most needs. And that's every corner of campus. So for let's start with the developers. So like the knowledge worker, the technical folks on campus. mainly staff, faculty, researchers. Right now, without hooking our cart to a specific horse, we broker licenses, and I think that has gone well. And something we can do better there is work with our vendors to get better pricing and ensure that the offerings that we have on campus are at parity or better for cheaper to our campus community.
That's a problem.
That is a problem.
Yeah.
And that's been a problem. And let me give you the prime example. With Anthropic, the consumer licenses include Claude Code usage of some capacity.
Right.
Whereas what we offer
And
currently...
co-work. And co-work, right?
And co-work. Although that's... Let me get there too.
Okay.
So, but currently our enterprise offering for campus, it's called Claude for Education, which is similar to their enterprise offering, does not include Claude Code usage in the license. So a lot of folks on campus, they're like, well, we'll even pay a couple bucks more and just go with the consumer route, which is harmful for us, and it's
Right.
harmful for them because they don't get the data protections that we provide them in our agreement and contracts.
Let alone the continuity of licenses.
Correct.
And that was a really important point that you brought up yesterday, is that when let's just say a researcher spends a year working in one of these environments, and then the subscription is up,
Right.
and financial policies at the university change on how you can pay for these things, we can't migrate them
No.
easily over into our environment.
Let alone if their account is tied to IRB approval or NSF funding or NIH funding. Exactly. So,
Right, because you have to follow that audit trail
Right.
all the way up to
Yep.
the
and
source.
then they need to migrate over. So now let's go back to what you're saying about the features that come with some of the large vendors. And if they are moving at breakneck speed, not always, but it tends to be, or we tend to see, that our environment at UT being federated and having different parts of campus, using these tools in different ways and needing different protections and controls are an afterthought for some of the vendors moving at that speed.
Absolutely.
Here's the best two examples. I love using Claude Skills on my personal account, mind you, outside of UT. We cannot yet enable Claude Skills for our tenant at UT, for our Claude offering, because we cannot control if a user, say your account, wants to upload any skill that they find on the internet.
Right.
Right? That's a huge security concern. So what we're working with Anthropic on is, can you give us admins a way to build an official library of skills that have been approved and vetted by ISO, and make
sort of
those
like what you're
available
doing with Spark agents, right?
Yeah.
and make those available to our users. But right now that's not the case. So we're back at the problem of, yes, we have Claude on campus, but you can't use some key features because of these implementations that are not accounting for our environment.
So that leads me to a different kind of question, and we all know that policy always lags innovation, right? And we've been chasing this with the privacy world for as long as I can remember, that policymakers lag behind the understanding of the implication of the software and the technology that's been released, and it takes them easily 1 or 2 legislative cycles to catch up to that. By the time they've caught up to that, however, that technology world, that on-ramp has hit the highway.
Yeah.
Right? And so it makes me wonder, like, in this new world, whether it's a new world or not is probably debatable because it's been going on for a while. It's just moving a little quicker. How do we better prepare our legal counsel, our ISO office, which we're blessed because we have a very forward-facing, Cam Beasley is a very forward-facing CISO.
Absolutely, yeah.
And he sees what's coming down the road. He knows we can't be 18 months behind.
Right.
But people in procurement think of it differently. People in legal counsel think of it differently. It makes me wonder if part of our adoption strategy, Mario, shouldn't be around onboarding those people that are part of the AI value chain.
Yeah.
I mean, they're not part of the deployment chain, but they're part of the discovery, the guardrails, and challenging and changing the rules so we can move a little more quickly.
Yeah, we're trying to do a little bit of that, Cole, with the advisory group that we're convening, right? We do have membership on that advisory group, which we are convening now. We haven't convened it yet with compliance, I'd like to get somebody from legal on that advisory group, just so that they are aware of what
Well,
you're
they-
talking about.
I meet with our general counsel, and I actually did a session for them on just Copilot, just to give them a sense of what was happening there. And this is a generalization, but attorneys are very paper and pen focused. They're very physical file focused. This is a whole new universe of a lot of them missed the sort of the jump to being digital, right? They didn't go to digital repositories for their content. They left things on legal pads. They lock things up in filing cabinets. There's no fuel there for their AI yet, let alone is there an understanding of what these technologies could unlock for other folks.
Yeah.
And Anthropic just released this new model for
Finance.
they did finance, but they also did legal. And it made me wonder, is it an opportunity to get our legal counsel into an environment where they can actually see, my God, what does redlining contracts look like when you can do it at 10 times the pace?
Yeah.
And would that help move their hearts and minds toward understanding why we need them as more active in the conversation than otherwise?
Yeah. Interesting conversation.
Well, of course it is, because it's like at the heart of all of these things, and
Yeah.
you can do it across each of the departments of the university,
Sure.
right? Like when we have a upcoming event that we're still planning for finance folks on campus,
Yeah.
and I think that's going to be a tipping point.
That's exactly the engagement strategy. Right?
Get them in front of people.
You have to get them in front and create opportunities.
and have members of the community show things off. And we
Yeah.
mentioned the project management agent that guy showed at the AI in a day thing.
Yeah.
And I'm in the back of the room just watching the jaws
Yeah.
drop. Like, it's almost like we talked about ChatGPT feeling like a magic trick. It still feels like a big reveal to people
Sure.
who've not typed words into that thing yet.
Yeah.
And yet here we are talking about what's next.
Well, we have to also look back too and bring our colleagues along with us, right? We should be at the forefront of some of these conversations, policy discussions, but we also know that there are folks that have maybe intentionally or unintentionally ignored the space for whatever reason, right?
Mhm.
So I think it's important that we also bring those folks along, or provide space for them to come along, opportunities for them to come along, like AI in a day, like we talked about the last time, right? So I think engagement is going to be really important. And I don't come back to your sort of intro story about Twitter. I have not seen a technology like this, a technology implementation like this on this campus. And I've been on this campus for 22 years, and I have not, other than the internet, what other technology touches campus in different ways from different perspectives?
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to go further back into when we decided as universities to start wiring up our campuses.
The network.
The network was one of the foundational layers.
But the interaction with that technology is a little different, right? It's more closely aligned to me to the internet.
Well, so the way I see it, it's sort of like the network brought broadband to everybody. And then browsers had to exist to translate the green screen machine learning or machine code into WYSIWYG. What you see is what you get on screen with simple markdown or markup. The internet we're still trying to digitalize, not digitize, but digitalize the operations of the university 30 years later. I think mobility, the rise of the smartphone, again, just build upon the network, the internet browser, and then it just moved that into a thing you could walk around with. I personally, and I'd love to hear both of your thoughts on this, I've not seen something that runs on top of the same networks, that lives in the same browser, exists in the same mobile container, that has such true far-reaching potential. Like, it could be the most profound technological, and that sounds so hyperbolic, but I don't know. I mean,
and we're just scratching the surface too, like you talked about.
Yeah,
which is crazy. And I mean, I think it goes to show, like, when we put tools like Claude, we put Claude Code in front of students, what they develop, what comes out of that. When we put Cloud Code in front of faculty, what the learning content the learning experiences that they're creating with Cloud Code, amazing, transformative, right? That's what I keep hearing, transformative.
Yeah.
Everyone now has capabilities to create high value learning experiences, not only faculty, but think students.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
It
and
is.
I think we're just scratching the surface, right? Coming back, would love a blank check, right?
Sure. If there are any listeners out there who have checks that have not
any
been written
donors
out
want to
yet,
donate.
make them out to the University of
Sure.
Texas. And in the memo line, put ut.ai studio, and then we'll give you a shout out on air. Maybe we need to get, was it a Patreon
Could
for this? We could get a Patreon for
I don't know if
this.
that's the idea of Patreon, but maybe. Maybe.
Well, I mean, whatever we could do, we could do it.
Yeah.
But Cody, you live in sort of the much more in the know layer of what's happening in technology, engineering, the developer space. Have you really seen anything like this? Virtualization, but nothing seems to have.
Not at this. Not at this scale. But I think that, not to derail us or put us onto a tangent, but something interesting that I've been talking to a lot of folks recently about is, with AI coming really into the mainstream, there's still a layer that I think has been ignored for the years that it has existed and actually been a really strong technology. I say technology, it's built on a lot of different things. But if you separate automation from AI,
Yeah. Okay.
a lot of folks right now are starting to think, they hear about AI, they hear it in the mainstream, and then they're thinking about AI and talking about AI when really some of what they're talking about is as automation, where you don't actually need the AI component yet, or you need a flavor of AI somewhere in the mix of the automation. So I think now I'm seeing, at least on our campus and other higher eds, and some friends in industry have explained the same thing, is that there's a cohort of us that are building automations, and then there are cohorts that are building AI tools to work alongside the automations, or they are a component of the automations. And I think that's where we're also going to see a huge benefit in the workforce.
Mm-hmm.
Is so, like right now, when I work with different departments on campus, some of what we're building is actually automation.
Right.
And then sometimes it's only automation to get them to the idea, but AI had them start thinking about the business processes in a way of, like, if you boil it really far down, how could a non-human help me complete this task? Okay, so a lot of that is automation with tools that have already existed for
a
years.
long time.
We've had license to these things for years, yet nobody has activated their licenses to use. Now they are, because they're thinking about AI, but in AI you need some automation. Right, okay, so I'm going to stop my tangent there on that. But to also bring up, in a similar vein, so we're starting on campus to see real benefit to this. We're starting to see, like, a ton of work hours being saved. That being said, and as an employee of the university, I've been here 10 years, I am doing much more work than I've ever done before. Mm-hmm. Not just based on my job and role, but because I'm getting more done and I'm now doing more.
Yeah.
And so that's something that, we're going to have to work through as a society and as a university, because my workload it's exponential right now than compared to what it was before I had access to all of these tools and before I understood how to really apply them to, my expertise. Mm-hmm. And I'm seeing it in all of the departments that we're helping, which I think is a really interesting and good sign. But I also think that there are some risks there, and there's some, And
I think that you're touching on something. If we'll go back to the internet, because I think it is a good metaphor. We didn't want to address the potential negative social outcomes of the always available update from yourself or a friend or a follower or someone. We didn't think about the cyberbullying at the outset. We didn't, there were voices warning because they had seen it manifested through other things, right? Every technology introduces new ways to do all the same behavior. The internet just put it in a place where it was in a kid's pocket in their bedroom behind a closed door. I'm sure if you guys had a computer growing up, it was probably more of a family computer, or at least a supervised experience.
Yeah.
Right? Now My kids grew up going into their bedroom
Yeah, sure.
with an iPad or a phone and being able to connect to just about anything.
Yeah.
I think it goes back to the same sort of discussion we just had about legal counsel. There's a larger responsibility here than just providing AI tools.
Right.
And I think it's a larger responsibility than just those of us in the academy. It's probably not being talked about enough. People focus on, oh, it's going to take my job. Well, what does it mean? Like your example, my example as well. I'm working more. I'm producing more work for other people.
Right.
And it's becoming very easy for me to see the people who are and aren't participating in the same new work-life pattern that I am. It's very easy for me when people are surprised that I can talk about something and generate an output an hour later, that those are things that usually take a week.
Sure.
And they're not prepared to react to them. So I'm moving things in and out of my inbox at breakneck pace, but maybe a third of my colleagues aren't even thinking about it. A third are adjusting, and a third are there with me. And I'm wondering if that's, are you seeing that too?
Oh, 100%.
Not just on yourself,
Yep.
but the reaction of others and what you get in return.
Yeah.
100%.
And also folks who are like, okay, you totally used AI to
Oh,
do
yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Which I think that will just become like an obvious, like as I work with more, departments on campus, staff and faculty and even students, like everybody's just assuming that you're using AI to do all of the things.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's true, sometimes it's not. Yeah.
To me, that's a literacy
It
issue.
is. Yeah.
100%.
Yeah, and again, I think we talked about this, but back at the dawn of the internet, graduate programs, teacher education programs all had classes and professional development events around teaching with the internet,
Teaching with the web.
right?
Yeah.
The internet scavenger hunt
Yeah.
was a common
WebQuest.
thing. WebQuest. Like these were all things that were designed to build literacy.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is there's not a determined output from a prompt. Like a web quest, I can send you to find an article on Wikipedia to introduce you to, the open concept of knowledge.
Sure.
Like that teaches a lesson. But I don't know what the hell ChatGPT is going to tell me.
Do you ever ascribe less value to something that somebody has generated via AI? I know I've done this too. It's like, but a vendor sends me something, I'm like, oh, this is for sure. There's some tell signs, especially early on.
Yeah.
But like the information, hold on, the information might actually be really good. And I've seen documents when I've reread them, and I was like, actually, this is probably better than what I could have done. Right.
What I love is the delta
I
between
still
the last
evaluate
email
it.
I get from a vendor and then the AI email that I get from them.
Yeah.
And this one is just, it may be shorter, more
Yeah.
to the point, but it misses the mark. Where
Yeah.
this one may be more wordy.
Yeah.
They're clear tells, but it relays better information.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so when we talked about that third, the people in the middle and the back, I can still tell
Yeah.
the AI coming out of them because they've not
Learn how to work with it. Yeah.
right,
Yeah.
and they've not tuned it.
Yeah.
And I think that that's what I noticed with Claude over ChatGPT is Claude seems to learn and remember more about the breadth of activities that I talk to it about than ChatGPT.
So my mind immediately goes to our last year's strategy, which was let's just throw everything out there, let's experiment, where you're using these different platforms, but not really creating context in one,
Right.
where it starts to give you better responses. It starts to become a true thought partner.
Yeah.
Whereas if I'm using different platforms, I'm not really getting that advantage.
Yeah, I'd love to hear Cody's reaction to that because that has a lot to do with, not only in the moment context windows and things technical of that nature, but how they're architecting the platform underneath to share the knowledge that you're co-creating with
Yeah.
your agent. Does that sound right?
Yeah, these things change all the time too, and so, let's talk about just ChatGPT, so OpenAI and Anthropic's Claude. So they both have different features that do some of the same thing, which is like partly context, how they summarize context and keep it in your context window, basically the shortest way possible, so that they're saving on the tokens to keep the conversations going, right? Then they have memory as a feature, and we won't get into that here, but like Claude has its own memory,
Mm-hmm.
and ChatGPT has something similar. But also, don't forget, you can make all the customizations kind of in the back end of these tools, in like the system preferences, and you can customize exactly. You basically give it instructions.
Meta instructions.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, for how you want it to interact with you and about certain subjects, what to avoid. Like, for example, don't ever use M dash, right? So like that was a thing earlier on when that was a big problem. Now the models, if you've noticed, that actually has been cut down, although grammatically they're like in English
they
use
are
M dashes,
using them
but-
correctly.
Yeah.
Yes, that's correct.
But
yes,
it is
exactly.
a full-on tell.
But now it's cringe.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I have a good experience, honestly, with ChatGPT and Claude. The thing that I'll bring up is, going back to when OpenAI released ChatGPT 5 and they got rid of all of their other models to our users. They got rid of everything prior to 5. And then 5 was not generating the outputs that people were used to in their older models. The older models were actually producing better responses in a lot of ways. That's another thing. It's a risk you run if you were to just choose one big vendor for campus.
Yeah.
Would it be the day that a new model is released and it's not going well, and then you have all of campus reliant on that one model to do the work that is critical for departments, for students? It's...
Well, it was the original thought with
Yeah.
Spark
Yeah.
as a platform, that it would be the place that we would build upon.
Yeah.
And again, we go back to the internet. When the web started to happen on campuses, every CSU had a webmaster, right? College school unit, CSU.
Yeah.
Every VP admin area had a webmaster.
Yep.
Everybody, we didn't want every area to have an AI master. We wanted to be able to build something that people could build upon, so we didn't end up with 80,000 websites.
Yeah.
Sure.
And so each time we maybe down select from our grand experiment, we get closer to that. We get closer to the vision of hopefully
Yeah.
a platform that could give us multiple years. And we talked about this last time we were together. This podcast is under NDA, so there are no damn announcements today. We're
No
not
announcements.
we're not sure this and where we're going. And I'll wrap up with this. And I'm curious, because we talked a little bit about this yesterday. What happens when AI moves to the OS level? Where we're talking less and less about interacting with an Anthropic Claude or an OpenAI ChatGPT, and Apple, for example, gets their shit together with Siri, but it really is Apple Intelligence for real for the first time, powered by Gemini.
Mm-hmm.
And it can do almost all of that at the local level. Windows with the Copilot PC, you see where this is headed.
Yeah.
And it's going to be an interesting year for us to watch. And I think it's important for everybody to realize that changes are coming to this industry. And we're trying to stay one step closer to being on the edge without being there. But that's going to fundamentally change the entire arc of the conversation.
Yeah.
Let alone security posture, privacy, all the
All
other,
the policy.
all of the other
Let's
things.
come full circle, right?
Yeah.
Back to that policy.
And it makes me wonder if, like with the Department of Defense and others, where PC and Macs arrive differently, like without webcams, right?
Sure.
With different
No mics, no
architecture,
webcams.
right? All those kinds of things. Will we be procuring machines without native OS-based AI things to protect our intellectual property, our content, all of those kinds of things? It's going to be really interesting to watch the technology industry break the rules of engagement
Yeah.
of the enterprise.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Be fun.
Going to be pretty cool. So preview, episode 4 coming up. That's the one that's going to have students, right?
Correct.
All right.
Looking forward to it.
It's going to be great.
Yeah.
Guys, I can't thank you enough for spending a little more time with me today. Super interesting stuff. We're going to see a ton more from these two guys throughout the ET Talk. Season 1. Are we going to call this a season 1? I think we should call this season 1.
I think we should.
Yes, this is how we're making this up as we go along. I think
Works
we're
for
doing a
me.
good job so far. 3 episodes, almost in the bag. Thank you to you guys. Thank you to our crew.
Yes.
Crew's
Thank you all very
dope.
much.
We're gonna have to introduce the crew one of these days. But this has been fantastic. Thank you guys, and I think it's time to get back to work.
Thank you too.
All right,
Awesome.
let's go.
Let's do it.